This is the Daily Saints Pod with Zach and Greg.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Saints Pod. My name is Greg, and once again today joined by my good friend and wonderful co-host, Zach. How you doing, mate? You all good?
Yeah, fair to middling. We've had a bit of a hectic week with scheduling and missed an episode, which kind of sucked. And yeah, it's just been a really, really busy week in every single aspect of my life.
Yeah, man.
So it's kind of nice to get back to at least what I would refer to as some sort of normality. Even if today's topic isn't really even current and up to date, to be perfectly honest, mate.
It's good, mate, because I took a journey on my solo episode yesterday and tried to take a step back and think about balance and perspective and look towards the future. And today we're kind of reframing that, thinking about the future of the past, which is the present, right?
Oh, something about me being a student of history broke my brain there with what you just stated. But what Greg is alluding to is that obviously not even, we talked about it briefly before, but it's technically an Athletic article embedded in the New York Times. So it is paywalled, but I will link it in the description. It was written by Dan Sheldon. That was basically 100 days of Sports Republic. And after they'd taken over Southampton. And it just reads, it's just a very, very interesting read as to some of the things that they were kind of looking to do, how there is a lot more long-term planning. We ended up going down a rabbit hole where we found out that Paul Onuachu once made a substitute appearance against us that I didn't believe, and neither did Greg until we verified it, which is kind of wild. But I just thought it was fascinating because some of the things that are in there almost have been flipped on its head, whereas some of the other things seem to have literally gone exactly the way that they wanted, right? So it's by Dan Sheldon. I mean, he's done another article down the line sort of talking about what was going wrong at Southampton. I think it was sort of like last year or the year before. But yeah, I'll put a link to it. But I just thought it was fascinating. They were talking about how when all staff kind of met in St. Mary's in the Halo Lounge, and there was a lot of sort of hype around Rasmus Ankersen, Henrik Kraft, and Simmons at the time, who, but it was like sort of, I understand that Ankersen has become, I don't know, like almost a villain of like our club now, right? Because we feel like it's entirely down to his mismanagement that we've ended up in the position that we're in. And then obviously he kind of goes off the Giuseppe, and he's kind of considered quite some of them like him there, but then also they're starting to turn on the multi-club model thing a little bit. But he had a bit more
Obviously, we don't know the factual matters or the ins and outs, but definitely the perception that I have as someone who follows the club very closely, as you know, is that he is someone who, we talked about the culpability and the responsibility of head coaches and directors of footballs. He is a businessman who tried to come in and meddle with the football without taking the responsibility of the manager. That's the set. We don't know how true that is or isn't, but that's the perception, right?
Yeah, and this was obviously before Simmons was no longer CEO as well, so there was that kind of... but if you want to know how far back this was and how it kind of feels like a relic of the past, mate, is that they talk in this article how to be able to have discussions with all of the staff, they had to split them into different groups for Q&A because of social distancing rules, despite being in a massive lounge. And you kind of forget that was even a thing. I know that, and we're going to bring up some other relics of the past soon. But yeah, I just thought that was fascinating because I forgot how long ago that kind of all was quite rife, and how going through sort of a takeover during COVID where we had some of our greatest seasons without fans, and the weird ability to turn fan noise on the TV or off despite there being no fans, and how much of an effect that definitely had on different title chants and that kind of stuff. But it was more that they were kind of outlining what their plan was. And there was actually significantly more level of positivity because people seem to look through rose-tinted glasses at how, Gao's tenure. He basically just did nothing. People try to act like, oh, well, at least it was better. At least it was almost better that he had hands off. And I'm like, not really. Because that was during a time where Chinese investment started being a bit of an issue. I don't think the guy even slightly really cared about the club. And I think he just wanted to own a Premier League club. And if I remember rightly, he had failed the ownership test before he eventually managed to pass it, right? But it was kind of, a big deal, 80% of the stake gone. And then they had finally got it coming in, and it didn't really look like initially much had changed. Obviously, things started to change. And one of the things they talked about was the use of Ankerson's brother's company transfer route that, by the looks of things, is potentially still knocking about. And I just kind of found that fascinating because, again, it's all this kind of sort of looking into, as much as you said, Greg, like not somebody that knows a lot about football trying to come and be all football-y, but thinking that he knew more about football, right? And he'd been involved previously in Brentford, as we discussed, Midtjylland as well, who, as me and Greg discovered, obviously, anyone remembers the Europa League? We played a game against them, and we found out that
two legs in the qualifiers, right?
Paul Onuachu made a 1-minute sub appearance against us, which is absolutely wild. Because when he was there, he actually scored a grand total of 51 goals and 134 appearances for them, which is nuts. Because can't imagine him scoring that many goals.
It was crazy to see that name pop up on the sheet. Jay Rodriguez, of course, scored a penalty in that game. So, I don't know. Like, really vividly remember whenever I see Midtjylland mentioned, I just really vividly remember playing them. And not being able to find the away leg on TV. It was just like buried away on like I think it was on like Eurosport 3 or something. Like, it was crazy.
But obviously, that kind of stuff aside, one of the big things that everybody was looking forward to, and one of the things that they started immediately digging into, was player contracts, commercial contracts, even down to the medical department that we know is going to be busy in the future with Ross Stewart and other perpetually injured players. This is around the time we're going to bring in Juan Larios, who's going to take up a bed pretty much for the entirety of his tenure at Southampton. But obviously, there was a big issue around commercials as well, because obviously Gao couldn't invest any money because the Chinese government rules were like, you can't invest money overseas. So even if he wanted to, which he didn't really seem like he was all for, he couldn't, right? And that was one of the things that they wanted to do. And like it or not, they have invested in the business side quite heavily, right? We talk about level one, we talk about the pub, we talk about all of the fan zones and stuff, and you can have your opinions on it and think that it's terrible because it makes the money. But ultimately, we were looking at a time when financial stability for the club was a massive issue. And it was kind of a bit more worrying at the time than we thought. And this is where I always take umbrage with the whole, like, they came in and ruined a Premier League club. I'm like, didn't ruin a Premier League club. We were kind of on the edge for a while. And, especially where we'd already had like decisions and previously being made. We've all heard that famous thing now with like Sparky not wanting Vestergaard, the owner liking Vestergaard, and then they just bought Vestergaard. And like we've all heard that kind of stuff now.
It was kind of the opposite of what it is now, right? Because I would say that where we're at now is a position where the business decisions off the pitch seem to be solid and profitable, and our books are balanced and all of the stuff that comes along with it. And the results are not living up to that name. Whereas I actually think in that time it was like the opposite. Like, behind the scenes was a shambolic, chaotic mess, but it was well hidden by the fact that somehow we seem to be getting results and doing pretty well. And the things that people and fans want to see.
Exactly. Well, at the time, mate, Hasenhüttl will charge. And they talk about how Ankerson's going to be the one that's more likely to talk to him because of his time at Midtjylland and because of his time at Brentford. And then obviously it goes on to talk about how obviously Sports Republic, as we are all aware, was not established to focus solely on us and was going to be inside a multi-club model, because that was at the time, like, we almost kind of forget we were like one of the first, if not the first purchase, right? They were kind of going to look around to buy other areas. And this is the bit where I kind of forgot that it also happened. One of the reasons why was to do around player trading rules in light of Brexit. And that's a direct quote. And I kind of completely forgot about Brexit in general. Because despite, whatever it means to you as an individual, like, it definitely had an impact on sport, right? And we kind of like don't really see that unless you spend time digging into it. But part of it was to essentially be able to get players in to higher banded leagues. So that's why they were looking at things like the Belgian league, the Turkish league, championship, potentially, they didn't really want to have differences with the championship teams. So obviously we know eventually they went for Giuseppe. But the idea is that any players from those divisions would score higher and it would be easier for them to join a Premier League side. And then obviously everything kind of with us went bad, right? At the time of this article being written, they didn't know that was going to happen. It's funny because it almost feels like it's flipped. It's gone from, you can get all these players into Giuseppe to then send them off to Premier League Southampton. In an actuality, it now feels like we can send them off to Championship Southampton. Then we can get them to other places easier. I don't know if that's entirely accurate or true, but it's
I don't know. I don't know if the sample size is big enough to really judge either way.
Because there hasn't been as much transfer activity between the clubs as you'd want there to be, right?
And the few examples that there have been could be perceived either way, right? Like they've gone to Giuseppe on loan, and then either it's been identified that they're good enough for that league, but probably not good enough for us, so stayed there or moved on. Or come to us with Matsky and starting to make an impression in the first team. And the only question mark was there was that striker, was it Juan, who we signed and went out Brazilian on loan to them and then moved permanently to them. And then in the January window was linked with a sale for like 20 million quid or something, but it didn't transpire or come to anything. So I just think that the sample size is too small to work out what the hierarchy as they see it is. And, that uncertainty is enough to cause the mistrust from both sides, right?
Yeah. I don't know if that feels like it was ever the purpose of the multi-club model. At the time, that might have been what it was outlined to be, right? Like, it'll help us deal with Brexit from this and the other. And it now very much, as I've said, almost feels like it's flipped on its head. But in a way that is there to produce profit, right? It very much feels like this is a way to develop and sell on players, being able to switch them between the different areas and the different leagues and potentially make a profit depending on where they suit best, right? We're not seeing practical, what I would consider to be advantages from it. All of the finances behind the scenes seem pretty dodgy. But clearly, I don't know if it was, this was sort of speculation from Shelton's part when he wrote the article, or if it was one of the main things they kind of said at the time, or at least out to press and journalists they spoke to. But I just thought it was just a fascinating insight. It's like, so that's supposedly why we have a multi-club model. But also, they wanted to try and build up some other stuff, right? So they wanted to build up a head of football operations where we took up sort of business development role that was taken up by a guy who left Portsmouth, right? Who had apparently helped develop a young guy. They go into that bit. I'm not going to go too much into it. But it was fascinating to see and talk about. I don't know if you remember the idea that there was going to be like no Southampton scouts, just going to be like Sports Republic scouting network, right? And this is where they were all going to hook in to the transfer room, which is Ankerson's brothers. And we know how that went down, right? Initially.
Yes.
It seems like that's changed hugely now. And, they've got the scouting network set up and it's not, I don't know how much, if I'm totally honest, we are digging into the transfer room or whether we use it much anymore. But I just thought that was fascinating. So I don't remember that being a big part of the takeover, but I do remember a lot of the conversation being around the fact that, we're going to have access to this massive, incredible scouting network. And rather than having a bunch of scouts focused on one team, you had significantly less scouts over multiple teams, not really paying as much attention, right? It's like when they bought Giuseppe, it kind of, if you're doing dual role at that point, regardless of what type of job you have, if you have double the workload, you're busier and not as good, right?
Yeah.
And I think some of the fascinating things was where it leads off, which is even though there's a change of ownership that has not brought any visible changes to Southampton supporters yet, the summer transfer window may be the first opportunity to understand what Sports Republic's intentions are, and there's plenty of positivity behind the scenes. That's changed, mate.
Yeah.
However, the club has now financial stability, which is something that could not be said during Gal's ownership. And I think that's probably still quite accurate, it really depends on how much we believe from what's come out of Valencius, right? Because I still have yet to see any concrete sources that there's an article that links some guy who's been a bit dodgy and there is a YouTube video, and that one YouTube video, as much as it's from an accredited journalist, like an accredited journalist should post their sources so everybody else can verify what they're saying is true. And it's starting to grind my gears a little bit because I can't find all this information other than a Reddit post talking about this YouTube video, the YouTube video itself. I saw, was it like the State Mistake, like a bit of criticism for, you're just sucking up to Sports Republic. It's like, nah, I'm just going with the evidence I've got in front of me.
Yeah, he just went with hard, solid numbers that
it's
added
difficult.
up and made sense. I think with Valenciennes, I think even when you dig into the slim sources there are, actually a lot of the concerns, accusations, I don't know what you want to call it, are not directly at Sports Republic, right? It's at the other people in charge of the club working with Sports Republic, and it's kind of more that they have allowed that to happen more than are sort of actively doing it, participating in it, whatever you want to say. It is a strange one for sure. But you're right, without like deep-rooted sources, it's impossible to
There
gauge.
is something weird that's going on there, and you can see that by the fact they've dropped through the leagues. And by the looks of it, when we took over, there was already weird stuff going on. And we were also apparently aware of that. And by the we, I use the royal we of Sports Republic. But again, I would like to reiterate that that isn't who we are. We are Saints fans. And this is why I find the last bit fascinating, which is Sports Republic's acquisition allowed for something of a reset at Southampton. And it is now about maximising that and growing not only the football club, but also its business by securing other acquisitions. And it's like, yeah, but it's not. It's not Southampton purchasing other clubs. It's not like an affiliate club sort of association. It is literally, there is a business where now, if all of a sudden one club starts doing better than the other, they will prioritise that club. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit with, I think a lot of people feel like we are seeing that with them prioritising Castepi because they're doing better. And we were supposed to be the flagship central part of this multi-club model. And it feels for a while they kind of pushed us to the side, right? Because we started being bad. And, you know, partly due to their investments, where clearly they trusted their scouting network to buy the entirety of Man City's academy and just hoped that would resolve all of our problems. And then obviously everything that happened under Hasenhüttl, and then the absolute terrible decision to go after Nathan Jones, or maybe it wouldn't have been if they'd let him do what they wanted, but apparently not. And then signing sellers for the rest of the year. And all those decisions are being made behind the scenes by somebody that clearly has had success in a Danish club and had success as a chairman of Brentford, but everything else was kind of like, you know, you make those kind of decisions on a whim and you'll end up in the position that we ended up in. And it's just, I find it, the whole article fascinating to look back at the past and see how the feeling was around that time. And I don't know if everybody felt at the time, this is the worst thing ever, or finally we've got some owners that can invest. And admittedly, we did invest, right? Like they bought a bunch of players, maybe too many players at the time, and it didn't work out in the end. But it's the bits that stuck out to me is that, like, well, ultimately they kind of established financial stability, and if they were focusing on growing the business of Sports Republic, they have done that because they now have 3 clubs and are still looking for a 4th. What that means for Southampton, though, is yet to be determined, right? We've had a very, very topsy-turvy time since their ownership. I feel like only recently with Spore's appointment have they started to get things better. And even with Spore's appointment, everything that's gone on this season has felt bizarre, right? Because we're in a bit of a high point at the moment. We've had another high point, but so much low at the beginning and so much like weird, weird vibes.
It's, I think when you take it a step out and a step back and look at it, it's sort of what I was trying to get to yesterday and didn't do a very good job of articulating. If you try and put it in the wider context of where we want the club to go as a whole, this season was always going to be weird because one way or another it is a huge transition, right? Like it's the first season that Spores is going to have had the full season of control of what he wants to do, but at the same time he is still trying to shift the club in that direction from what it was doing before. And that is always never going to be a smooth and seamless transition, no matter how you try to manage it. And I don't know, I was thinking about if that's something that they came out and said then and sort of got ahead of at the beginning of the season, perhaps it would have made it easier and better to do. But it's I don't know. It's not
Well,
really what you'd want to hear as a fan either.
Here's a question: do they care?
I don't know.
This is where I kind of, this is where some of the stuff, like, it's really important to us, and like we feel entitled as we should because we're the ones spending all the money to maybe get sort of more information and have them speak more about things. But like, you look at their backgrounds and where what the business they've worked at is, it is another investment to them. It is not like they have picked Southampton Football Club and specifically the football in general, because I really, really am passionate about, owning a football club and really, really want to see or succeed in, like, this whole thing around developing the area around St Mary's. Again, it's just money business decisions, right? Arguably, some of that stuff they are getting right because clearly with the businesses they've built, they've done that successfully before. But yeah, the footballing side, it seems like they've just outsourced it throughout the entirety of the opening of Sports Republic. And you can tell that by the fact that a vast majority of those names mentioned don't have anything to do with Southampton Football Club anymore. Ankerson doesn't touch it. Semmens left as CEO, and admittedly, that was probably a good thing. Gagliardi, who I don't recognize the name, but he was the guy that was supposed to be brought in as like the business development role, and maybe he still has that at Sports Republic, and we've just never seen anything about him.
Yeah,
and
that's
obviously
the thing, right? It's all back room and behind the scenes, whereas what you see visibly is the football. But I think, I think that I touched on my opinion on it a bit yesterday. In that, if it was easy to come in and run a football club, everyone would be doing it. And what football on the whole across the board has displayed frequently recently is that there are not very many people that are good at it, and it's not easy.
No, I can think of Forest, I can think of Spurs, it's just sit here and name most Premier League clubs, half of the Championship clubs. It's a very
Leicester, Chelsea, Sheffield Wednesday,
it's not a
clubs
unique
at every
thing.
level. It's not easy to do it right and to do it well, and especially when realistically the front-facing part of what you're judged on and what fans will always judge you on is, at the end of the day, 11 different adults kicking a bag of air around. Like, that's not something that you can easily control. It much unlike many of the other things in business that you approach, right?
It's not, and I think that's why people are so frustrated, because they are doing the things that they know how to control, like the fan zones, like these bits and pieces. That seems to be so out of their control that they almost sort of exercise the responsibility. And you've seen that by the fact that, they shift and fire and rehire and Spurs is in charge of all the football now. So if the football's bad, it's no longer, you could no longer shout up the stream. But it's like ultimately them ignoring the football for so long, as we've talked about for so long on this podcast, is as you just said, kind of the problem. And at least they're kind of paying more attention to it now.
I don't even know so much if it was ignoring as much as not being actively involved in, but there was definitely a lot of it that comes from leaving a lot of decisions too late, right? In inaction.
Yeah.
So it's tough, but like I say, it's not something that is easy, and I don't, even though I don't really like the multi-club ownership model, and I've got lots of gripes with it and lots of other concerns, I don't think any of it's through malice. I don't think they've come in and sought out to get us relegated to the Championship and then have an up and down season like we've had. I think that they also wanted to come in and make the business great, and nothing is better for business than winning the Premier League. I think that they'd love that as much as anyone else. So,
well, it seems they like to gamble, right? They picked a team that, everyone said we're an established Premier League side. That's not true. We almost went down beforehand, right? Yeah. There's been times we've almost went down. It was basically down to Gabbiadini we didn't, right? Previously, and we are a risk. Giuseppe was a risk that's massively paid off for them. Valencios was clearly a risk that they knew about and has not paid off for them that well. And it does very much feel like, as business people, they talk about being data-driven but it does almost feel like they're big gamblers, right? Everything seems to be, well, either this is a good gamble or not. It's mad how often we talk about that with some of the players. And you're right, obviously there's risks and things, but they never really explain the backup of the data. And sometimes everything does kind of just feel like a roll of the dice. Like, if it works out, it'll be great. If not, it's a problem, right? I don't know. It's either way. It was fascinating to go back to a time where, like, the word social distancing came up, and I got whiplash. I was like, "Oh yeah, that was a thing." On top of that, a time where behind the scenes and everyone had nothing but positivity for ownership that were going to spend a bunch of money, and now down the line, we're second season in Championship in 4, like mad, isn't it? Really, but 2022, 4 years ago now, almost 4 years ago. This article was written. I'll post it. You feel free to have a read if you can, get past the paywall or pay to read it.
Yeah. Worth the subscription, I think, is what
that's the word. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, look, an excellent read and good topic, mate. I really enjoyed it. It's fascinating to see the shift and the change and what time looks. And who knows in 4 years' time what we'll be sat here saying about Sports Republic. Boy, I hope they're listening, because that win in the Premier League thing would be really good. Come on, guys.
Could you imagine? Guys, we need to have a word with the boys. These 2 podcasters really would like us to win the Premier League. You're right. We should do it for them. No, mate, fine. Let's change the world by desperately pleading for some incredible...
I don't know if it's a philosophy you share with me, Zach, but I think you've got to put these things out into the universe and manifest them with all of your belief.
I always prepare for the worst, so if it's okay, at least that way I can be moderately happier.
Oh, look, mate, that difference in approach is what makes our show so interesting.
Something like that, mate.
But look, that is all we have got time for today. So thank you, Zach, for the topic and for joining me.
Yeah, a bit of a weird one, but slightly, slightly fun.
I really enjoyed it. And thank you everyone for listening. Let us know in the comments, in the socials, your thoughts, your feelings. Are you still feeling as optimistic as that article from 4 years ago? Is there any optimism left?
How did you feel 4 years ago when they took over? Did you think it was going to change the world and that Saints were going to do nothing but go up? Nothing up from here, baby? Or,
Let us know. Like I say, on the socials, in the comments. We're Daily Saints Pod. Absolutely everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, Blue Sky, YouTube. Hit us up. Let us know. We love hearing from you. And while you're there, if you enjoy listening to us, why not give us a like and a subscribe? It goes a really long way to help us out. We notice it all. We've seen the engagement go up across the board. And it just brightens our day. It drives us to do this. And as a newly independent podcast, it just really helps. And it's great. So thank you all so much. We will be back tomorrow to preview our upcoming game against Charlton, which I'm sure will be a fantastic episode with lots of jokes about Nathan Jones. Until then, though, have a wonderful day, everyone. And we will see you then.
This is the Daily Saints Pod with Zach and Greg.